In Port Clinton traffic, Mooney 16 Delta Romeo, departing 27 westbound, Port Clinton. Good, airspeed's alive, for 64. There it is. Rotates, positive rate, gear coming up. For 90 miles an hour and flaps up.
There's some stuff Belfast for Port Clinton.
Off. Line power getting set. Alright, part 2. How I buy airplanes. So you picked your airplane. Now it's time to...
Number 61842 to lead approach the request.
Negotiate the sale. In terms of settling on a price, I have no good advice for that. That's up to you. But the big question always is how to do a pre-buy inspection, how to know that you're getting
42 radar contact 15 miles
the airplane that you think you should be getting. This is where I learned a good lesson on the second airplane that I owned, the Piper Apache. The first airplane I owned, the Cessna 172, I just did kind of your standard pre-buy inspection. So one of the big things you want to do, any pre-buy inspection you do, don't take it to the mechanic that normally does the maintenance on the airplane. You always want to get a...
Number 353, how far into the class?
An unbiased opinion, someone who's not familiar with the airplane.
I was going to try to
and also the guy, whoever's been doing the work on the airplane, it's one of the things we always joke about for what bad engineers say is, of course it's done right. I did it. I did the work. It's done perfectly. Well, that's not always the case. Everything we do as an engineer has a independent peer review as a third party to look over the work of whoever did the original work. Because, of course, as I said, everyone's opinion is that, they did the work perfectly, they did it right, or else they wouldn't have done it the way they did it. So it's always important to get a unbiased opinion on the status of whatever it is you're doing. In this case, a pre-buy of an airplane. So when I did the Cessna 172, I had the owner fly it to an airport about 20 miles away. Hired people there to do a standard pre-buy inspection. Everything came back great. I bought the airplane. Everything was as expected. And awesome. That's cool. So I used the same strategy on the Piper Apache. Well, that one didn't go so well. I got it back. I topped off the tanks before parking into the hangar. Came back the next day to fly it, and there was a puddle of fuel underneath the left wing. And not just a few drips, a giant puddle, 4 feet in diameter puddle of fuel.
That's for 1 Charlie Mike.
So problem 1,
Mike, Abrams, stay out of
bad leak in one of the fuel bladders.
Detroit Approach will have that for you. Contact Detroit Approach 134.3.
The good thing is the annual inspection was due in about a month or so after I bought it, and I happen to know a shop that was very familiar with Piper Apaches. So they came in.
Zulu, descent maintain 5,000.
did the annual inspection, and I got the report on what was wrong that needed to be fixed for the annual, and it was going to be $13,000 plus. It was like $13,600. Imagine my shock when, after buying an airplane and having a pre-buy done on it, that I was going to get a bill for over $13,000 for stuff that needed to be fixed. Enter my big lesson learned. And even scarier yet, they knew enough about, well, they have to, because there's an AD, an airworthiness directive, on the flap torque tube. So that airplane has a single flap actuator, and the two flaps are connected by a torque tube, and there's an airworthiness directive on that torque tube, because there's been instances of that torque tube cracking and breaking,
November 337,
resulting in a split flap condition, and of course, you know, the airplane then rolls over if you're not ready for it, and could possibly invert and kill you on short final. Not a good thing. So anyway, they looked at the flap torque tube, and that torque tube had a big crack in it, and they basically said it was probably, you know,
we continue into
that they don't know how many flights, anywhere from, you know, a couple to
actually, I was just going to circle Lambertville,
you know,
and then head
small
back
number
to
of double digits for the flights before that flap torque tube was going to break and possibly result in my death. Obviously, I wasn't very happy to hear that.
Number 353, maintain VFR at or below 3,000, traffic 10 miles
so those two
northwest of your
instances,
position, southeastbound 3,500 Cessna.
All right, we'll maintain at or below 3,000, 353.
Gave me, made me realize I need to think about a little bit of a different strategy for how I do
3,500 traffic,
pre-buy inspections of airplanes.
3,000.
One person always told me, was like, well, you know, you should do an annual as a pre-buy. Well, part of the problem I had with doing an annual as a pre-buy is that if the airplane turns out to be a, you know, a big lemon like that, it's $13,000. You know, I could give the airplane back to them, but I'm out of the expense of doing the annual inspection, which for a complex airplane like that, it's going to be close to $3,000.
Published, maintain 4,000.
So I had the thought that
Remember, 704,
if I'm going to pay for an annual for the guy, or, you know, I shouldn't have to pay for the annual for the person. If the airplane turns out to be a lemon, you know, it should be up to the guy, or not a lemon, but at least, you know, a lot of stuff wrong with it, in an unairworthy condition. The person should fix everything before giving, you know, before I purchase the airplane for him. Or if he decides that he doesn't want to fix it, well, then I shouldn't be paying for an annual inspection for the guy. He should have to pay for it. So that was the agreement I had with the person that I bought this airplane. I wrote it all up, talked to him about it, and, you know, we both agreed that it sounds fair that I'm going to arrange an annual at a shop of my choosing. Once the inspection part is done, all the airworthiness items need to be fixed by the seller of the airplane. If it's, you know, things that are, you know, hey, this should be fixed or whatever, you know, we can negotiate that at that point. But in terms of airworthiness items, the seller is responsible for fixing them. And then the agreement was, if the seller decided that he didn't want to fix them, that it was too much or whatever, then he's on the hook for paying for the inspection part of the annual. And then basically I have zero risk in it at that point. The person was happy enough to do that, thought it was fair. We both thought it was fair. I typed it up into a legal agreement. I'm not a lawyer, but I actually had a lawyer, a friend of mine, look it over, but it turns out, you know, it doesn't have to be really that much in legalese in order for it to hold up. Anyway, so he, you know, we did this. I chose a Mooney specialist shop, the closest one to him. Called, talked to the guy there, told him, you know, what was going on, that I was going to pay for the annual, providing that he'd agreed to fix everything. If not, he was paying for the annual. The shop said that sounded good to them. The plane was delivered. The inspection came back, and guess what the bill was for airworthiness items? It was almost identical to my Piper Apache. It was somewhere around $13,500 worth of airworthiness items. Of course, the guy who was selling the airplane
4061 Juliet Toledo
was
radar contact, proceed on course.
and got a little bit of traffic here I'm looking at. guy who was selling the airplane was very unhappy.
Traffic, 3 miles northeast, wind up on the indicate 3,000.
Of course, had some bad feelings, like I was,
traffic observed in the vicinity.
you know, trying to screw him over, trying to, you know, kind of trapping him in a corner and whatever. You know, after talking to the guy, he finally agreed that, you know what, it was fair. Nothing was set up. We weren't trying to screw him in any way. It was just the way the way the ball bounces. And he finally realized that he was just really angry with the person that was doing the maintenance on his airplane for letting a lot of these things go, and they should have been fixed along the way rather than being stuck with this one giant bill. So in the end, you know, he was happy to fix everything and adhere to our agreement.
Traffic, 12 o'clock, 3 miles, maneuvering altitude indicates 1,700. Everything
was fixed. It came out of annual, had a fresh annual on it, and I went to pick up the airplane. The other thing, by the way, in terms of the purchase itself, is I used an escrow because we had to do it on the weekend, so I wasn't going to be able to do a wire money transfer. So I used AOPA as an escrow service that I would highly recommend if you need to purchase an airplane.
127.2.
So I went to pick up the airplane. We signed all the escrow agreement, and by the way, just so everyone's aware, the guy selling the airplane, his motivation for selling the airplane was that he was having another kid. He had 2 kids already, he was having a third, and a 4-seater airplane wasn't going to work for him, so he was actually going to buy another airplane after selling the Mooney. He's a 6-seater, like a Cherokee 6 or something like that. So anyway, after it was all done, you know, we talked just a little bit.
Number 7 kilo, Mike.
And the one thing he said to me, he goes, I just want to let you know that I learned a lot about buying airplanes from this experience. He said, you know, I'm looking to buy a Cherokee 6, and how, you know, the agreement that we had is exactly how I'm going to buy the airplane. I never talked to him afterwards to see, you know, to learn if that's actually what he did or not, but the nice thing is, you know, we left on good terms, and he realized, you know, it was fair. It made sure that the purchaser was protected. It was nothing untoward on the seller. I mean, it seems to me, you know, if he's advertising an airworthy aircraft, it should be an airworthy aircraft. And the other thing is, you know, you see a lot of places that will say, you know, this airplane has a fresh annual airplane. Well, as I learned with my, you know, buying this thing and buying the Apache, well, a fresh annual may not be worth anything, you know, depending on, you know, if the guy's buddy does the annual and says, hey, I'm looking to sell this, do whatever you can to squeak everything through. So I guess that's my, you know, that's my story.
Detroit approach.
Lessons learned.
Juliet Echo level 5,500.
Do an annual. Don't do a standard prebuy. Worried about the cost of doing an annual?
2.35.
Yeah, have it in the agreement that if the guy decides afterwards later that he doesn't want to sell it to you,
Zulu fighting 350 to maintain 4,000.
Have it in the agreement that he's responsible for paying for the annual. If I haven't mentioned it before, I bought this airplane in March of 2010, so it's coming up on 11 years that I've owned it. It's been, you know, pretty reliable. Haven't had anything to complain about. Just your typical minor issues. I think I had to have the landing gear rubber discs replaced once. A couple little things here and there. I think replaced the fuel pump at the last annual. Then of course, well, the one big thing is the engine overhaul, but you know, I knew that going in. I bought this airplane with close to 1,700 hours on the engine. And that was also part of
7 Romeo Victor traffic.
A decision on my part.
Northbound, have to indicate 3,400.
Is that I would rather, personally, providing that, as we talked about in the last video, the you know, the dollars per hour on the engine works out and makes sense in terms of the value of the aircraft, and I have the money to put towards the engine overhaul, I would rather pay for the engine overhaul knowing it's done at a shop that's highly reputable, rather than paying for an engine that's freshly overhauled, done by Billy Joe Jim Bob in, you know, some hangar somewhere that you don't know what was done in the overhaul.
1 Charlie Mike for the transition to the Willow class Delta.
So I decided that I would rather buy an airplane with a higher time engine, and that way I would be able to get the engine overhauled the way I wanted it done. That was important to me. Willow Run Tower, Mooney 16 Delta Romeo, 10 south, full stop at the Victor.
Mooney 16 Romeo, Willow Run Tower, ident, Willow Run altimeter 3034, wind 250 at 6, remain clear Detroit class Bravo.
All right, main clear the Bravo, here comes the flash, Mooney 16 Delta Romeo.
Mooney 16 Delta Romeo, ident observed, enter a left downwind for runway 23 left.
Left downwind for 23 left, Mooney 16 Delta Romeo. Midfield downwind. Gas on fullest. Fuel pumps on. Undercarriage come down. Fixtures richening up. Props full forward. Belts are on. All the switches are on. Put in the flap. Hydraulic valve doohickey. Pumps, flaps coming down. Trim it nose up. And 16 Delta Romeo has a traffic in sight.
6 Delta Romeo, roger. Say again, parking?
Bird cage.
Roger, expect a 1A after landing.
Thank you, sir. Gears down. Wow, it's disorienting. Flash from the prop in the sun is kind of rough.
Mooney 6 Delta Romeo, make a 180, turn right golf, taxi to park, monitor ground 119.97.
Alright, 180 golf and monitor ground, Mooney 16 Delta Romeo. That's probably one of the only times, in fact, probably the only time in my life I've ever been half blinded by the sun and have the prop flicker. Some weirdness.